Good evening. I hope that you've all watched Thundertoe's video on the pandemic. This is a response. Of course, today is May 7th, and I'm here to sort of, shall we say, correct Thundertoes and a few of the things that he said in his video with the board and the marker and his numbers and recommendations. And let's go back here to when this swine flu started, and let's go back to the first generation, and let's even go back to the first person who contracted this virus. Now, the flaw in Mr. Thundertoe's argument is that if in fact this virus was contracted originally in Mexico by one person, Mexico is very populated, and in reality, when he uses his, if one person comes in contact with 4 or 10, but you see that one person would have more than likely come in contact with possibly thousands of people. If taken into the statistical probabilities of how many of those people would have contracted, it would probably be in the hundreds. And this spread at this point would probably possibly be in the tens of thousands, not simply 1,000. By next week, given the statistical analysis and the traveling of people and the confinements in airplanes and subways and this type of thing, and the population of the earth being over 6 billion, and of course back in 1913 with the Spanish flu, or 1915 or 18 or whenever it was, the population being much lower, obviously things would spread much more quickly. The generational acceptance of the virus and its contractual and every generation within a week is one thing, but you see it would be much more apparent right now. If in fact that's the case, which is what I believe, then by the in 5 weeks, Thundertoe sort of says, well, this could potentially spread to 6 billion people. So by the end of the month, the end of May, then there should be about 6 billion of us, or let's just cut that number by a quarter. There should be about 1.5 billion people infected with this. Now we shall see, shan't we? and I don't think by the end of May, when we're going into our so-called 5th or 6th generation, do you really believe that? Let's even go down further and cut that number in half. Due to some people washing their hands and taking precautions, it should be about 750 million people by the end of May, according to what Thundertoe is saying, that should be infected with this. And do you think that's going to happen? I don't. And the idea that the Thundertoes is recommending, and of course I think also correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the World Health Organization and the CDC and all these organizations about washing your hands and not touching your face, and of course the things can enter through the mucous membranes, and we talk about the nose and the mouth and even in the eyes, and can you imagine how many people on the airplanes and subways and walking and sneezing and the railings, and the people that don't wash their hands? I mean, this thing would be out of control already. And certainly by the mid of May, even if certain people, or a quarter of the population of the earth, took precautions, which they don't, it'll be completely out of control. So anyway, I think Thundertoes is a little bit off base on this one. I think it's a good thing that in fact he's, looking and trying to, help people in his own way, whatever sort of logic he comes to, and explains things, and he explains them quite thoroughly. But you see, he's a little bit off base on the numbers, and I think we've got to be very careful on that. I think the human body and life in itself is a little bit more resistant than that, with everything that's happened in the last century. And as you can see, given the fact with everything going around, there would be so many pandemics at this point. There'd be nobody left on Earth. It's a little bit of hype from the Thundertoes perspective there, and I'd like to correct him on that. And the other thing is, there's a lot of people don't realize, if you really calculate it down to the second, in every hour there's 60 minutes, there's 3,600 seconds in an hour, and if you go 24 hours a day, there's 365 days in a year, 365 and a quarter actually in the leap years and everything. Yeah, but really. And I don't know the exact numbers, I'd have to do the recalculations, but in every second of every day worldwide, there's 2 people are born, perhaps 3 at this point, and 1 person passes away. So if you do those numbers, sort of, and again, I have to do an exact recalculation. I'm just not going to do that right now. I'm just going to go by some memory, some calculations I did a long time ago. You're really looking at the population increase in the world of 1 person per second. In fact, probably a little bit more than that, probably about 5,000 people per hour, of an increase in the population worldwide. About 100,000 a day, but perhaps more, 36 million a year, maybe it's closer to 50 million, maybe it's closer to 100 million, but, and the thing is, we have to look at this all in perspective. And the next thing you've got the bird flu and the swine flu, and of course in a few more months or a year, whenever, there's going to be another one, and the virus and the potential mutations, and everybody should be washing their hands and wearing a mask and taking all the precautions, and that all sounds good, and it's very interesting, but is it practical? And Thundertoes only talks about the United States. Think about all the countries. Think about third world countries. The spread of the disease would be rampant, completely. And you've got much more to worry about, if you really want to worry about things, about people who are hungry, and people dying of starvation every day. And those numbers are astronomical. And think about the diseases and the viruses and the mutations that take place there. It's sort of a perspective thing. So anyway, the point of all this is that if you follow Thundertoes numbers, and I know you can go back and watch the video, but certainly by the end of May there should be 1 billion people infected with this new swine flu, H1V1N1, whatever they call it. And I just don't believe it's going to happen. And we'll leave it at that, and we'll check back with you in the coming weeks and at the end of May, and we'll see what happens.